The Edgar Thomson Steel Plant sits between 4 boroughs in western Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh: Braddock, North Braddock, East Pittsburgh, and North Versailles. It is the oldest and only remaining steel mill in the region, built by Andrew Carnegie in 1875 and then sold to U.S. Steel in 1901. Edgar Thomson Steel Works ushered in the rise of the steel industry in the early 20th century and the economic and demographic growth of towns like Braddock. But along with that, the environmental pollution and toxicity that defined this region for decades.
With the decline of the steel industry and the rise of white-dominated suburbanization in the region, these towns lost much of their population and economic base. Today, the outdated Edgar Thomson plant is listed as one of the most toxic air polluters in Allegheny County and has a decades-long history of clean air violations.
The Edgar Thomson Steel Plant operates as part of the Mon Valley Works, 3 interconnected U.S. Steel facilities in the Monongahela River Valley, which continue to create intersecting and multi-generational harms for the largely Black and relatively low-wealth communities.
In 2017, U.S. Steel leased land on Edgar Thomson's site to Marion Oil and Gas to establish wells for hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, a process through which oil or gas is extracted from the ground by injecting a mixture of water, chemicals, and sand at very high pressure.
Western Pennsylvania has been a key site in the efforts to build out infrastructure for unconventional oil and gas extraction in the Marcellus Shale region. Since the 2000s economic crisis, fracking has often been promoted as both an economic savior as well as a relatively cleaner form of fossil fuel extraction.
Some of the key harms of hydraulic fracking include the contamination of groundwater and surface water. Chemicals used during the fracking process include arsenic, benzene, cadmium, lead, formaldehyde, chlorine, and mercury. Fracking sites are also known to adversely affect air quality, induce seismic events, deplete freshwater sources, and create noise and waste pollution, as well as a range of workplace harms.
Even as environmental costs have been abundantly clear, many mainstream politicians have remained supportive or ambivalent on fracking and petrochemical industries. But grassroots organizations across the country have been vocal in calling out fracking and its detrimental social and ecological consequences for local communities. North Braddock Residents for a Future was formed in 2014 when well pads were first proposed on the Grandview Golf Course in North Braddock. North Braddock Residents for a Future worked with North Braddock Borough Council to update its zoning ordinances.
In May 2014, the North Braddock Council passed a new zoning ordinance limiting oil and gas activities to land zoned as industrial, thus prohibiting gas drilling on the Grandview Golf Course.
But the victory was short-lived. In 2017, the same company, Marion Oil and Gas, came together with U.S. Steel to build fracking wells on the ET site. The environmental harms of proposed drilling operations at Edgar Thomson would have added to air and other forms of pollution that the local communities continue to face because of the plant.
The proposed well pads would have been located close to the Monongahela River, close to Turtle Creek, within a 1-mile radius of 21,000 people. The laterals would extend 2 miles starting at the river under houses, churches, libraries, businesses, and through 3 municipalities.
Together with local residents of the affected boroughs, North Braddock Residents for Our Future put up intense opposition to Marion Oil and Gas and U.S. Steel plans. Over the coming years, this included encouraging residents to attend public meetings to express opposition, organizing numerous events and gatherings to raise awareness and funds to support legal efforts, and much more.
In January 2020, faculty and students in the School of Architecture at Carnegie Mellon University teamed up with North Braddock Residents for Our Future as part of an urban design studio. Over the course of the semester, students engaged in dialogue with local residents. They used drawing, mapping, and design to create materials that visualized the histories and processes of fossil fuel extraction, industrial development, and environmental injustice, as well as forms of community stewardship and residents' own visions for transformative change and just futures. These visual stories took the form of maps, timelines, sketches, collages, diagrams, and they served as a great tool for collaboration and collective thinking with members of the community. Engaging in these interpretive, collaborative, and community-centered approaches provided an opportunity for us to rethink design methods as forms of environmental justice storytelling.
One thing I would like to say specifically about the future-looking projects, this is completely resident-driven. If we want to sort of talk about resident engagement and community engagement, residents are here first, right? Like, we're not responding to consultants that show up and then sort of ask us what we want. We're working collaboratively with designers and youth and students and people, you all who have like listened and heard us, right? You're not kind of saying, well, this isn't feasible. Your idea isn't feasible because there is not a market for it, or, right? It allows this space and opportunity to actually have a dream.
The project has now come together in the form of a public-facing online platform that tells the story of North Braddock Residents for Our Future's campaign against fracking.
The site is also intended as an archive or resource for other activists, organizations, designers, and residents, making available many of the documents and materials from the campaigns against fracking.
And finally, it brings together the conversations and work of students and community members about how they envision possible futures.
On Friday, April 23rd, 2021, thanks to the tireless organizing efforts of North Braddock Residents for Our Future, allies, and many community members, U.S. Steel announced that it was canceling its plans to move forward with fracking wells at Edgar Thomson. This is one step towards preventing additional environmental and human health harms in Braddock, North Braddock, East Pittsburgh, and surrounding areas. But by no means the fight for environmental justice is over. One down, many to go.